It's Mother's Day Eve, and we're talking about chord expansions. Happy Mother's Day Eve from C Major Before the Show. Chord expansions, shout-outs, stories for Mother's Day. That's next here on C Major Before the Show. And an invitation to tune in for the Mother's Day edition of the C Major Radio Show. And you're here with C Major, and we have so much to cover. It's a beautiful weekend here in the greater New York City area. It's not too hot, it's not too cold, and the sun is shining. It's been shining pretty much all day, and I know tomorrow will be a little bit rainy, so don't let that spoil your fun if you have something planned for Mother's Day. But anyone who's celebrating Mother's Day, our hearts, our thoughts, our prayers go out to you. And we hope that you will have a terrific day if you are celebrating. But today's show is about chord expansions. So we're going to jump right into that and then get to those other things that I'm promising to talk about on today's episode. Because I know that when you listen to the show, you kind of want to just get the information up front and then decide if you'll keep listening. So we appreciate your time. We appreciate your attention. And so take out the original piano chord finder if you have it. It's a resource that will allow you to find any chord instantly without reading music. There are suggested voicings. And we can also talk about how to accompany any song from ragtime to rock and roll. So that's the promise that this book holds. So I think I mentioned in the promo leading up to today's episode that I was going to be playing on the computer. I don't have my software pulled up that I normally do that on, so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to skip that today. What I'm going to actually do, and I think I mentioned that I hadn't decided if I would do it yet, but I'm going to actually go to the piano today so you can hear how I'm expanding the chords there. So stay tuned for that in a few moments. So you'll hear some rustling around, and so don't be too alarmed if you hear me moving from place to place. But let's go ahead and go to C major. Let me just lower my music here for a moment. And so what do I mean by expansions? I mean, expansions can mean what you want them to mean. I really try to cater this podcast to my students and really bring to the table the experience that I have working one-to-one with students in person, as I have from time to time, as much as I can, whenever I can, just sharing my experience. And someone was talking about that. They were saying, you can be successful however you want to call it, being successful, whether it means going out and doing something that others call successful. But at what point do you really stop to say, I'm going to try to share what I know, what I feel most comfortable doing? And it's been a journey for me, I'll have to say, because what I initially thought I would be sharing, I have shared a little bit of that, but what's been more interesting is that my students have ended up being some of my best teachers. It may sound a little cliche to say something like that, but they really are teaching me because I'm listening to them about how they learn, how they best learn, how they want to learn. I'm not just dumping a whole bunch of information in their laps and saying, here, learn this, or I'm not just saying, okay, everything has to be instructor-led. You must listen to me. So I'm not autocratic in that way. And, even when it comes to teaching my own songs, unless somebody says, look, I want to learn to play this, then I probably don't bring it up. Or if they just ask, do you write your own music? Then I'll say, okay, yes, I do. Here's a little bit of what it sounds like. And then they give their impressions and then we move on. But I think for the most part, the way that we learn music has changed, in my opinion. I just had a different experience altogether. But anyway, I'll come back to that thought. If you have your book, if you happen to have this book, then turn to page 6 because it gives you a picture of the C major chord. It gives it to you by chord name. It gives it to you by symbol. And then if you happen to read music, if you happen to be seeking that experience, definitely see us over at the C Major Radio Show because we're doing that over there. So just pretend, if you don't know how to read music, that we're going to give this to you instantly without the need to read music. But if you're interested in reading music, we'll also give it to you on the staff as well. And see us over at the C Major Radio Show for that. So if you can, find a C. C is to the left of your 2 black key group. So find a C. 1, 2, C is there. Go ahead and find your E. 1, 2, E is there to the right of your 2 black key group. And then 1, 2, 3, G is there. So we're spelling a C chord or a C triad. And then to expand that, the way I'm seeing it, and I'm looking at it on a staff as well, you just add a C an octave lower or in the bass. So if you don't know what I mean by octave, then you can just start on the C and just count down to 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You should land on the bass C or the C an octave lower than middle C. So that's one way of expanding it, so you get more of a lower frequency in your sound as you're playing. Now what I like to do, I like to go ahead and see if I can play a C lower than that. So in a few moments you're going to hear me do that on the piano. So I'm going to play it the way that I'm describing it now and then go back and actually play it a little bit differently. And that's what we mean by expanding the sound. There's also a way to do it so that you can have the triad in both hands and then expand outward that way. So I'll try to demonstrate it at least 2 or 3 different ways and you may hear the difference. So the other chord I want to go to is C minor. So you would do the same thing for that. So C minor is spelled C, E flat, G. And then you just play the C an octave lower than middle C to expand that. And then if you care to, find a way, and you will hear me do this later, to play the triad in both hands and then put a C on top and then put a C on the bottom. So you can do that too. Okay, now we're going to go over to F. And what I like about this book is that they give it to you in a different hand position altogether. So the C triad that I spelled out earlier was in root position. But here, we're going to go to F major, and it spells C-F-A. So it's definitely inverted. We haven't really even talked about inversions yet. Just mentioned it, but I haven't really explained to you just yet. But it's all about distance. If you can hear distance, if you can see distance, if you can really just process it in a way that you can understand, then that's great. But if you have any questions, we'd be happy to help you out. Okay, so go ahead and play your F chord as C, F, A. And then put the F in the bass. So when I go to the piano, I'll try to do it that way too. Just really just playing around and just seeing what comes up. And if it bothers you to play it that way, then go ahead and just play it in root position, F-A-C. Okay, now go to F minor and then play C, F, A flat in the right hand and then play an F in the bass in the left hand. And all of this is in the middle of the piano so far. So we're really sticking around to the middle of the piano. Okay, now we're going to go to G. And have you do the same thing for G major. Okay, so again, G major here is inverted. And so I'm going to ask you to play D, G, B in the right hand, and then expand that by playing a G in the bass. And this is the D that's nearest middle C. So then you have D, G, B, and then in the left hand, you can play a G in the bass. And then do the same thing for G minor. So you would play D, G, B flat, and then in the left hand, play a G. So that's basically it. And then read what you can from this book to learn what they are having you to do, because there are different styles or different techniques. They have a section called General Chord Theory, piano styles, where they talk about ragtime, they talk about blues, they talk about boogie-woogie, they talk about swing, they talk about rock. They also talk about enharmonic equivalents, which I think is so interesting. So just have fun with this book and see what you can do with it. Okay, now what I'm going to do is you're going to hear some movement. I'm going to turn my music up a little bit. And then what I'm going to do is change my location. So just bear with me a moment. And I hope you had a good week. I had a pretty good week, I would have to say. Some of the days were a little rainier than I thought they would be. But for the most part, it was a good week. I'm really looking forward to the summer months when we all get to go to the beach. I have some friends that are planning to go on vacation very soon. They're already talking about places of the world that they plan to visit. I have some friends that are playing golf this weekend. So let's see. Now I'm here over at the piano. So I'm just going to play for a bit. Okay, so one thing we haven't talked about today so far, and you probably noticed we haven't talked about D, we haven't talked about E, and we haven't talked about A. And I was talking with one of my students about this today. She has a type of method that kind of jumps around a little bit, but they don't really tell you why they're jumping around. It was just the method that we chose for her, that we thought would work best for her. And so it was so interesting because we came to a particular unit where they talked about everything having to do with an F major scale, but then on the next page, they jumped to key signatures, talking about the key signatures for D, E, and A. So we were both looking at each other going, I don't know why they just did this, but maybe we should go back and reference those songs that you've already learned, even just using an F major pentascale, and then play some songs in F major. So if you ever come across something like that, that's a good time to get a teacher involved, because maybe they can understand the design of your method if you happen to be in a method. Or if you happen to be doing, which is so exciting, if you happen to be doing peer-to-peer learning with your friends, still, just see if you can pick somebody's brain who knows a little bit more about what's going on. Okay, when we go back downstairs, we would definitely talk about how to expand D, E, and A. That was the reason for bringing that up. But let's go ahead and see if we can expand everything here. So what I'm going to do now, I'm not going to play in the middle of the piano. I'm actually going to go an octave lower and play my C triad down here, which I like to do. And then what I'm doing, I'm sharing that triad with both hands. So I have my thumb on the root and then my other thumb on the E, which is a third above C. And then I have my second finger on G. Okay. And then I'm putting my finger, actually I'm using my ring finger. You could use your little finger if you want to do that. And then below I'm using my little finger down there. Okay, so that's my C chord expanded. So what do I mean by expanding the sound? Does this sound full to you? Or does this sound full to you? Okay, so you just have to think, okay, how can I make my sound fuller or expand it? listened to other episodes, you've heard me do this. And now we're going to go to D. Okay, so D, F sharp, A. Okay, as a triad. If you want to hear what it sounds like in the middle, again, I just have my thumb on the root. And then now I'm going to play it so you can hear the difference. So if I do just triads, okay, and I played it using more of a staccato touch. And so now I'm going to play it where it sounds expanded. Okay, so you may have thought of expansions when you saw the word in the description of today's show, in the promo. What was I talking about? I have a student that I work with this week who's very excited about playing 7 chords, major 7 chords. So in his mind, expanding the chord meant doing this. It's where you expand the sound so that you put in the 7. Because major 7th chords are created by combining the 1st, the 3rd, the 5th, and the 7th steps of the major scale. So if you need to study scales, we have something for that too, but we're really talking about chords here, and I think chords are a wonderful thing. I'll say a little bit more about that once I go back to change my location. And so it's just so interesting, the conversations that take place, really, when it comes to music making and who has the authority to talk about certain topics and what they're trying to do with music and music education. But we're going to say a little bit more about that. I don't want to get into the politics of it all, but it's just very, very interesting. You have a lot of gatekeepers out there who think they know best when it comes to music making and who should be in it and who should be out of it. Okay, so if you think of expanding your chord as doing that, then just know major 7th chords are going to be coming up. So, now giving you a way to think about another way of expanding. And we will be getting to that here in our Chords for All series. We started off with the Piano for Parents series, which may or may not have been a fair name for the course, but it was a 12-week course. And the reason for that is that I was thinking, I had parents in mind because I have so many conversations with parents, and it really seems they want to know more and they just don't know where to start. But in the future, we may just shift it to a different name so it doesn't feel like we're picking on parents. That's not the motive at all. But you just have to be so careful here in this age of social media. So many things can be taken out of context. So just be careful and just ask questions. What we meant to say is that we want to introduce chords to adults that are interested in playing music. Where do you start? And so when I talk about our Mother's Day stories, I'm going to mention that there's one grandparent that really stood up for her grandchildren when it came to learning music. And I will be talking about what she did. And so know that if you're going to be studying chords, you can create your own practice directions, your process for practicing. The first time you may decide to play hands together. The second time you may decide to play just the left hand only. The third time you may decide to play your right hand only. The fourth time you may decide to play hands together, higher or lower than you did the first time. And then here's something that I challenge some of my students to do. Close your eyes and see if you can play hands together, because you really want to feel it. I have a student that always talks about muscle memory. But again, we're stepping away from 7th chords and we're just going back to what we did before, and that was just expand the chord. So I was talking about inversions earlier. We won't get into that, but just suppose that you were asked to play your C chord this way. Okay? Meaning you play the G first and then followed by the C and then followed by the E. Okay? So you can expand your chord that way. That leaves room for the left hand to come in as an octave. Okay? And already to me it sounds like a song, because where I had my first musical experience in my community, a lot of us used to play so that you were chording melody in the right hand and playing octaves in the left. And I often wonder how that would have been different if I hadn't read music. Would I have played it a different way? Would I have even tried to chord melody, So we may get into that in the future, or I may decide to host some sort of event where we're talking about the different styles, the different ways of playing, and how was it making music when I grew up, and how the community used my music making skills. But that's for later. I would rather actually hear from you. That's something that you want to hear me do. That's something that I've learned too over the years, is that you can think it's a great idea to share information, but what's even better is if somebody requests you to share that information. That's what I've found. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is change my location again. So you're going to hear some movement as we follow the music and go back to where the recording is playing. So, now we're back. Okay, so what I want to do now, and you're here on C Major before the show, what I want to do now is just go back to this resource and look at their ways of expanding a D chord. So I've already used C, F, G, C minor, F minor, G minor in the examples of expanding the chords the way that it appears in the book. And then I've also just demonstrated it on piano. So for D, E, and A, what I'd like to do is just give it to you the way they have it pictured here in the book. Okay, so I would say go ahead and play your D chord in root position, which would be played as D, F sharp, A, and then expand that chord by adding a D in the bass. And then do the same thing for D minor. So you would just play D, F, A, and then play your D in the bass. E, do the same thing. Play your E triad, play it closest to middle C, and play it in root position. Play E, G sharp, B, and then in your left hand in the bass, play an E. So that's expanding the root. And then for E minor, same thing. E, G, B, then followed by E. And then let's go over to A. So this book has a different layout too than the other book that we were using earlier. So it doesn't go in ABC order. It starts with C first. So we're over here at page 24 now with A major. And you may see it pictured in a book that shows you chord symbols. You may see it pictured as just an A. It may not even have an A and a capital M for major. It may just be A, which means A major. And then you have A, C sharp, E. And then you would just play an A in the bass. And then for A minor, just play A, C, E. And then an A in the bass. So again, we just focus on staying around middle C to spell out these chords for you. And then tune in again for the C Major radio show, because we'll be over there showing you how to write these chords down. So very excited about the C Major radio show. I think it's very fun to talk about music theory and to go into some other discussions about musical terms and so forth. So we will be doing more of that over there at the C Major radio show. You're definitely invited to join us over there. Right now, though, we're going to take just a small music break. I'm going to get a sip of water, and then when I come back, we're going to talk about shoutouts. You're listening to C Major Before the Show. You're here on C Major Before the Show. You've just been listening to some recorded music, and we were just taking a small break, but we're back now, and we're ready to give some student shout-outs. So I'm very excited about that. Are you excited? I hope so. Because I'm excited about the students that are challenging themselves and parents that are supporting their children. And so it's always interesting to me to know how students will want to challenge themselves. And it's always exciting to see when they make that request. So you may think of a student challenge as, say, here's an assignment, do this, do that. But it's even more exciting when the student says, I want to do this, I want to do that. They will it for themselves. And sometimes there's a little concern, because what if a student wants to jump over the process and do something that's very advanced? Then that's when you have to just have a talk with them and say, okay, what's really going on here? So in the whole interest of peer-to-peer learning, sometimes peers can push you to a place that they're ready to go, but you may not be ready to go. So in terms of your knowledge of technique and your knowledge of theory and just your knowledge of music in general. So your library, your personal music library and songs that you know may be different than somebody else's. So somebody else may have grown up with the song, let's say, for instance, Alouetta, and you didn't grow up with that song, and then your friend tries to teach you that song, and then you find it difficult to learn that. You shouldn't push yourself to learn something that may be frustrating for you or easy for them. But at the same time, it may be something that is part of your musical goals, and you can write that down and just talk with your teacher about that. So then that song, for instance, would become instructor-led, because the instructor will tell you, okay, this is what you need to play that. This is what is involved in learning to play that song. But Alouette was just a very simple example. I'm going to give you a song a little bit later, and it really is in line with what I'm talking about. If a student's only been taking music lessons for 4 weeks, and then they decide, I want to play something that's probably going to realistically take me 2 years to learn technically, how do you say that to them without discouraging them? That's sometimes a challenge of music teachers. Now, I grew up in a time where music teachers were they were no nonsense. First of all, they would just say, absolutely not, you will not be playing that. Forget that. Learn what I have for you to learn. And then later on, if you decide to gallivant and play around with popular music, then do that on your own time, but not my watch. Basically that was the attitude of a lot of the old school piano teachers out there. But I do still want to give a shout out to students challenging themselves. They're using YouTube to learn songs. They're using their peers to learn songs. Now they're using mobile devices that will hook up via Bluetooth or some other way with their digital pianos at home and teach them songs, that way. So I have a student that's working on learning all the songs that her little heart desires, and she's writing them down the best way that she can. And every time I go to a lesson with her, she'll show me a little something of what she's learned. And she's very, very motivated. But at the same time, she sees the importance of staying in a piano method so that she learns everything properly that way too. But she has the support of her parents. So again, it's a kind of a wordy shout out, but I definitely want to give a shout out to students challenging themselves, parents supporting their children, students who are not comparing themselves to their peers in terms of progress, and parents who are not using private lessons as a way for someone to babysit their children, or, a chance to multitask and go out and do other errands while you're teaching their children. They're actually being involved and staying present. So to me, that's a big deal, and especially with Mother's Day coming up, I think it's so important to acknowledge the parents that are supporting their children and the students that are challenging themselves when it comes to music making. So shout out to all of you. I think that's great. Now, that song I was talking about is a song, and I posted this on social media. It's a song called Lost Boy by Ruth B. And if you look at the video, it's a very touching video. But I had a student who's been with me for a very short time requesting to learn that song, but so motivated that she's going ahead and writing down in her own way the letter names, the text notation, if you will, something that I was on my way to studying in my research after I found that that's the way a lot of people were learning. And so she's so determined to learn that song. She's taking the initiative to write down the text, write down the letters, and have me teach her the melody. And that's just how she's learning. And then I have another student, believe it or not, who literally takes his mobile device. I won't say if it's an iPhone, I won't say if it's a Samsung, but literally holds it up to my ear and say, here, listen to this. Now teach me what you just heard. And that's that student's idea of piano lessons. Now, am I to judge that? I could judge that, but if I'm able to do it and then show the student, oh, this is what's going on, then why not? And if the student learns from that. So I'm very motivated by all of my students because I feel like they're independent thinkers, that all of them just have their own ways of learning, their own ways of seeing how music making should go. And that's what I meant by having students challenge me. It's it's been a long journey because what I thought I would end up doing, I'm doing not only that, but a more modern mix, I would say, of piano teaching. So it's piano teaching along with technology, piano teaching along with social media. And I just think the sky is the limit. I really do. So it goes beyond that whole saying that the playing field is now leveled. It goes beyond that. It just goes into this whole area of who's doing the teaching here in the 21st century. Is it YouTube? Is it peers? Is it instructors? Is it something else? What I want to see, to be honest, I want to see families learning from each other. So not just peer-to-peer learning, but what if you had someone in your family that could teach you piano and you trusted that person and they put you on the path to learning? I think that's a thing I would like to see more of in the 21st century. So that was, again, the reason for the Piano for Parents series and why I wanted to start having that conversation, that dialogue with parents. And I know I'm not the first person to do it. I know there are a lot of other conversations going on where you're talking to parents and finding out what they're doing to motivate their children to learn and stay with piano. So when I start talking about my Mother's Day stories in a minute, I'm going to bring that up because I'm going to share with you how I learned to play the piano and the result of piano lessons versus learning on my own in the very beginning. But that's going to be coming up in just a moment. Here on C Major Before the Show. Now let's have some fun. I feel like we've been talking a little bit on the heavy side of things, so we're going to try to have a little laughter here because we need that. Everybody is talking about the Game of Thrones coffee cup. Did you see the coffee cup? And why is everybody talking about the coffee cup? I think it's because you have so many people that are now into coffee culture, something that we talk about here on C Major Before the Show all the time. So even our photos of the show, if you follow that, going to our platform, you can see that we, from time to time, just take a picture of coffee or at least bring it up once or twice during the podcast. And so coffee culture is going to be an ongoing topic for us and music making and wellness. But everybody's talking about the Game of Thrones coffee cup. And not only that, everybody's talking about the new dragon drink that came out that references Game of Thrones. So, again, it's all meant to be fun. It's all meant to be, something that's lighthearted. So just laugh along with me. Thank you very much. And then if you are interested to know what's on C Major's menu, then I'm going to tell you what I have this week. And you can decide if it's something that you want to experience for yourself, because we always invite you to bring something to drink here on the podcast, something that contributes to your wellness. It could be hot, it could be iced, but one of the things that I discovered, and I did mention this a couple of weeks ago, I discovered a fruit flavor in my coffee. And so it started out as a blueberry flavor that I experienced. And I thought, I bet if blueberry tastes pretty good in my coffee, I wonder how raspberry would taste. So now I'm onto this raspberry thing. So if you care to, you can recreate this experience for yourself. So I share it for you. This is unofficially, but officially on C Major's menu, meaning unofficially, meaning I haven't published it or anything like that. It's just something that I'm talking about. But if I can generate some interest in it, who knows? It may pop up on my website over at musicglue.com/C Major Porter. I'll put it up there for you to download. But what I do is get an iced coffee, and then I just add a splash of raspberry. And you have to be careful with the splash because you don't know how many calories are in the splash. But it has a really interesting flavor, that coupled with the caffeine itself. Or if you're decaf, then get decaf with a splash of raspberry and see what you think. And then you can add whatever milk you want. So it could be macadamia nut milk, it could be almond milk, it could be soy milk, it could be coconut milk, it could be regular milk, or half and half, heavy cream, whatever it is that you put in your coffee. Or just enjoy it black with a splash of raspberry. So I highly recommend that. And then hot. What happens with hot when you put a splash of raspberry in like a very tiny cup of coffee is that it really does seep through to me a little bit better. And the flavor is just more pronounced. So that's what's on C Major's menu for this week. So thank you for listening to that. And then I chase it with a glass of ice water, just a small glass of ice water. So from time to time you'll hear me mention some things that I have had that week that I want to share with you. And so now I'm going to move on to C Major's classroom, C Major's journal, C Major's favorite musical terms, and then I have some reminders. And those reminders are really for me because I wanted to talk to you about a few things. I'm going to jump in a minute on social media and do a search as well on these things that I wanted to bring up on today's podcast. So if you happen to be over C Major's classroom, I would say between tonight and tomorrow, we're going to post the homework for the week. And I'm still deciding what that is. All we did today was talk about expanding our chords. I don't know if that should be homework. Maybe it should be something else. Let me think about that. But definitely meet us over there. It will be either later on this Mother's Day Eve or on Mother's Day that we'll post it. And then C Major's journal. Now this is new because probably you didn't even know that I have a journal. But I read and I heard from someone who's very famous, by the way, who said that journaling was a good thing. And then I tried it for myself and I found that it was. Journaling is almost as good as being on a podcast, because here on the podcast, I can talk with you about things that I think matter to you, but journaling, I can talk about things that really matter to me. And nobody has to see those things. But we like to think and overthink things here on C Major Before the Show. And so what keeps playing in my mind is how over the years, so many people have talked to me about music making, just in general, whether it's music making that they're doing, music making that I'm doing, suggestions for music making that they think I should be doing, and things like that. And so it really took me a long time to compartmentalize all of that. And I just thought, what is really going on? So I came up with some questions. And I really wanted to share this with you today. I thought, you know what? I should share this with the listening audience and see what they think about this. Because I think at the end of the day, you have to feel comfortable with the music that you make. And that's the reason why I've said over and over and over on this podcast, make the best music you can make, whatever that is. So it goes along with the whole thing of peer-to-peer learning and all of that. So I'm looking at my journal now. And what I'm going to do before I start talking about what's in that journal, I'm going to take another sip of water. And I'll be right back. You're listening to C Major Before the Show. You're here on C Major Before the Show. I'm your host, C Major Porter, otherwise known as C Major. So feel free to call me either one, C Major Porter, C Major. Some people like to call me Carol. That's fine too. And I think Carol is an old-fashioned name now. Not too many people named Carol that I know. But it's Carol without the E. And it's one R. But the question that came to me, that had me write in my journal, was, what music can I play well? And I want you to ask the same question for yourself. Just ask that question. What can you play well? Or maybe, what music would you like to play well? But I asked that of myself. What music can I play well? What music do I know I can play well? And I would have to say it's classical music. And then the next question I asked myself, what music should I be playing? And that's a very difficult question. It's a philosophical question. What music should you be playing? That's such a tricky question, isn't it? I mean, would you ask yourself that? If you learn to play the piano, would you ever ask yourself, should I be playing the music that I'm playing? What music should I be playing? But the whole thing just came to mind because I just can't get it out of my mind. That year that I did this competition, and I won the competition, and the judge came to me and just said, I don't understand how you can play this music. And it was right after I won the competition, after I placed first and had all the points and pretty much had a flawless performance, something that rarely happens. But I put a lot of practice time into that, and then to have a judge say that to me, I mean, to this day, I still don't really know all of what he meant. I could only suppose what he meant. And I can only tell you how I felt in that moment. It wasn't like, hey, congratulations, you played really well today, because the piece that I played that won was a classical piece. It was a sonata. And then to have the judge come up to me, I was standing by myself, and to be honest, I can't even say if I had won yet, or if I knew that I had won yet, that it had been announced. But I knew in my heart, and I felt that the performance was good. And then the judge approached me and said, I don't understand how you can play this music. And I think the thing that stood out in my mind was this music. What does he mean by this music? And over the years, I just thought, well, what music should I be playing? That music? Well, what would that music be? This music over that music? I don't know. I really wish I could have a conversation with this person. And he's still around. He's still judging. He's still teaching piano lessons. And it's an interesting question. I think it would have to be rhetorical for today. What music do I want to play? That's the next question. So if I could just chart all of these questions side by side, they're so related and interrelated, but, I asked this question because my students seem to be more clear on this than I am. What music do you want to play? They want to play songs that they hear on Spotify and other places that their peers are listening to. This one student wants to play Lost Boy by Ruth B. And I just don't recall that when I grew up taking piano lessons. I just don't recall saying to my teacher, I want to play one song over another. Until much later, after the 2, 3, 4 year mark, and just saying to her, oh, I think I want to play this song from this Broadway musical. And she said, oh, just get the sheet music and read it. You don't need to study that with me. Don't waste my time with that. She never said don't waste my time with that, but it was just we had bigger things to go on to. I had to learn the Fritz suites by Bach, and I had to, learn this music by Mendelssohn, and I had to learn all my recital pieces by Chopin, and I had to learn this Beethoven piece and go on to that Schubert piece and that impromptu and that, piece by Brahms and although we didn't learn much music by Gershwin, not even that much music by Debussy. Some people say Debussy, but I grew up saying Debussy. I never learned to play any music by Scott Joplin. So it's so interesting. I have a student now that's turned his attention towards the music of Scott Joplin. I'm thinking, why? Does he think that's what he should be playing? So interesting. But maybe that's what that judge meant. How's that you can play this music? Meaning, to me, I think he meant classical music as opposed to maybe that music. I don't know. I still don't know what this or that means. But what music should I be playing? What music do I want to play? I guess if I had to pick, what music would I want to play? I would have to say, I do want. Some part of me wants to play jazz as well as I play classical. And maybe one day that'll happen. I just never really tried to put forth the effort because I just never did. Just the need to play jazz or the urge to play jazz or to play blues, that was something that was kind of frowned upon by some family members. Whereas other family members were waiting to hear me play that, oh, you haven't gotten there yet, was the attitude, towards my piano playing. It's like, oh, it's nice you can play Brahms, it's nice you can play Bach, it's nice you can play Chopin, but what about blues and jazz? When you're going to play that melody that you hear on the Peter Gunn show? What about the way that Ray Charles plays? When are you going to start playing like that? When are you going to get in there and tear up that organ in the church? Really play all this around the world gospel music and all these different flourishes. When are you going to play like that? And for a long time, I didn't have an answer for that. So is that the music that I want to play? Should I be playing? Music is supposed to be fun, right? That was another reason why I started the podcast, because I wanted to talk to others about music making and the fun of it all, really. Just having fun. What music do others think I should be playing? So it plays into that. That's a heavy question because I do have so many opinions about my playing. Well, you should be playing funk music. So when I tried out for this band, the first question was, well, is she funky? And I thought, I'm not even really sure what that means, But I do identify with a lot of the funk music that I heard growing up because of just the way it sounded, the way the horns were used. And, I identify with the sound of it. It sounds really cool. And, it was a music that it was the type of music that my neighbors were into. And they always got all of the most recent recordings that came out. And so why am I sharing all of this? It's really personal. You see those things on the internet that say, only certain people deserve to hear your thoughts and things that you want to tell. But I really feel like we're friends, that I can tell you. So the ones who've been invited to the podcast to listen that I know personally, I hope that you'll keep on listening and that we can have a dialogue when I see you, because this topic on music and music making and wellness and coffee culture and music, that's all very close to my heart. And so what music do I like to play? That's another question. So you compartmentalize that question. And I would have to say, I like playing all music. I do. Even if it means reading a lead sheet or a score that has easy access to an R&B song or to a funk song. I don't mind sight reading that. I've talked about in the past of how I got my hands on my first piece of sheet music. That was a song by Kool and the Gang, and I was just so excited to see what that looked like. You know, for me in music making, seeing is believing, and just seeing what those chords look like when you chart them on a staff and just playing that. Just thinking, wow, this is so cool. But I didn't really feel cool when I was playing it. And it wasn't until much later when I started actually becoming friends with musicians who play this music on a daily basis, a nightly basis, for a living. This is what they did, the gigs that they got, that how they put that music together, how they were able to cover those songs. So it's not something you can get out of sheet music. Sheet music is really there for the reference, so you can see what the chords are doing. So you can see what the changes are. You can put together your own arrangement of any song, which also brings me to, most recently I found out that there are some publications now. I don't know how new they are. Really interesting, where they basically break down some of the most complex songs in terms of melody, in terms of harmony, and they break those songs down into 3 chords or 4 chords. I just think that's so interesting that the song got reduced to that. So there you have it. We've talked about what's in C Major's journal, and I would just encourage you to start journaling your own music experience as well. You know, which music do you like to listen to? What do you identify with? What's the music that you listened to most when you were a teenager and you were growing up and going through adolescence and learning to make friends? And what music or musical style or genre do you think you should be trying to learn to play or learn or play? And that's an important question, because what I come across is, especially with my adult students, they'll say to me, oh, you know, I studied, now I don't remember anything, and I want to go back to that. I feel like I should be playing classical music. And then you start with them, and they start seeing the dedication and the commitment that it takes to practice on a daily basis to get to where they want to be, and then they just say, you know what, I think I'm just going to go with the simpler way of playing the piano. Can you teach me to play by chords? Can you just teach me something? And then that's where the chords idea came up. So interesting, right? Now, let me talk to you about some of my favorite musical terms. So I was recently able to find on sale this really, really great manual of musical terms. So if you look inside, there are definitions. There are biographies of musicians. It talks about notation. And so I just wanted to turn your attention toward the discussion about chords. So over here, if I look up their different definition of chord, it says a harmony of 2 or more tones. So that's very different. We gave the casual definition of a chord is 3 notes with a space between each note, right? And then if you look in the theory book that we use for the 12-week series, it says something altogether different. Then it goes on further to say a harmony of from 3 to 5 tones, forming an ascending series of diatonic thirds. So this goes along more with what the textbook is saying. And then it's asking me to refer to some pages. Let's go back here. Okay, so if I go further into the book, and then it just says, a chord is formed by a succession of from 3 to 5 different tones, built up in intervals of diatonic thirds from a given tone or root. A 3-tone chord is a triad. A 4-tone chord is a 7th chord, chord of the 7th. A 5-tone chord is a 9th chord, chord of the 9th. And then it goes on to show you a picture of, or an illustration of 9th chords and versions of triads and versions of 7th chord. So this book is going to be really good for us when we start talking about inversions, and we really need a way to talk about it. I'll try to put it in more simpler terms, more basic terms, and then when we get over to the C Major Radio Show, we'll talk about it in more music theory terms. And then it says a flat or solid chord is one whose tones are produced simultaneously, as opposed to broken. Now that's interesting. So rather than use the word block chord, they're using the word flat or solid. So, okay. I like this book. I don't know when it was written, but it's nice to see their ideas of how you should describe musical terms. And it seems to have gone through several editions, but the original copyright was right at the turn of the 20th century. Can you believe that? And it appears that they didn't have a new edition yet for the 21st century. So, between now and maybe the end of the 12-week course, I'll see if I can find a dictionary or a manual of musical terms that have been written in the 21st century and see if something new is there, so I can just keep you updated. But something like this it's not bad. It just basically gives you a way to talk about the definitions of key musical terms, talk about styles, talk about forms, talk about musical instruments. So it's a great book to discuss with someone that you really like over a cup of coffee. You're here on C Major Before the Show. We've just spent quite a number of minutes talking to you about C Major's classroom, C Major's journal, C Major's favorite musical terms, and we're going to go into reminders next because I want to go on the computer with you and just share with you some things that have come across my desk this week. So I hope you'll stay with us. And if you can, go ahead and bring out your mobile device. Take out your computer. And this podcast is really good. Let's say if you're traveling somewhere. If you frequently travel, let's say if you're driving from here to Philadelphia, or you're on your way to Boston or New Hampshire or Connecticut, just put it on, just let it play. I think what I'm going to do over the summer is try to do a few more podcasts across the week in case you're driving across the week. But then if you need something to kind of take up your time, to listen to talk back to, I want to be that person. I want to be that podcast for you. Okay, so you're here on C Major Before the Show, and we'll be right back in just a few moments. Here's some music for you to listen to. And when we come back, we're going to talk about some things that I'm reminded of that I wanted to bring up to share with you here on the podcast. Back in a few moments. back, and you're here with C Major Porter here on C Major Before the Show. And we're trying to have a little fun with you today. But at the same time, we want to go online with you. If you happen to have your computer, your laptop, your mobile device, go ahead and pull things up for now as we go on with you. And I just wanted to remind myself to look up some songs. So, this actually may become the homework, and I'm thinking about it. So I wanted to look up something called, and I'm wondering if I should look this up on YouTube. You know what? I'm going to do a general search first, and then I'm going to see what comes up when I look on YouTube as well. Let's see if we can make this happen right now. We are spending a little bit longer time with you today, so if it feels like we're running long again, just put on a pot of coffee and stay with us, because we want you here. And I can hardly wait till we get to that point where you start really trying to have these conversations with us. It's going to be so much fun, I think. As we continue to grow. Okay, so this composer wrote a vocalese. And I think what I wanted to have you do was just listen to that. So it's going to be a very different homework. So as you work on expanding your chords, expanding your sound, we're also going to have you take a look at some random pieces online, just to kind of whet your appetite to the different types of music, different types of genre that are out there you can listen to. Different composers, because I'm finding also that my students, some of them have never been exposed to classical music. So to say to them, you should be playing classical music, they're looking at me like, there's no way I'm going to learn to play classical music. That's not even music I'm interested in. But when I was growing up, again, we all learned to play classical music. Even if you never went into it later on, you still learned the methods that were out there. But at the same time, the methods were limited. There was no iPhone. There was no Samsung. There was no mobile device that you can do a search on. There was no iPad. We didn't have laptop computers back then. And so it was just a different time. If you wanted to learn to play the piano, you had to go to the neighborhood teacher and then trust her to introduce you to a method that would work for you, work for your learning. And then everybody participated in recital. But, just to whet your appetite a little bit, WHET, whet your appetite, just look up some of these pieces that I'm going to have you look up. So I'm just looking now to make sure we can locate them on the internet, because they are so random. So it's going to be a vocalese, and then I'm going to have you look up something called an andantino. And these are inspired by a student that I'm working with, where piano is not that student's first instrument choice. Let me say it that way. So if you're learning to play a musical instrument, or you have learned to play another instrument, or you have been playing, and now you want to turn on to piano, this is going to really either turn you on further to the idea or turn you off. Let me say it like that. I really think it would be either extreme. So, okay. Okay, so that's there. I can locate that. So, a vocalese and andantino. There is a duet that I want to have you look up. These are so fun for me to see, because these pieces are familiar to me. Okay. So if you know anything at all, let me just give you a hint. If you know anything at all about Papageno and Papagena, okay, hint is from an opera. Okay, so I'm going to be listing that. So, okay, one more thing. It's a patriotic song. but it's a certain arrangement. Okay. Now the good thing about this is that you can find this one free. It looks like it's available. A lot of this music is available free. And someone was just talking about this today. NAFME. Okay, so maybe I should put that in my notes. You know what? I won't. Actually, you know what? I will. Let me just put a comma here. Oops. Typing on the wrong device here. Okay. All right, so I'm done with that now. Okay, one more. No, two more. No, one more. Okay. And then, interesting. And I once had a friend, too, to tell me, if I wanted to be famous, I should learn to play this patriotic song. I'm not going to say any more about that, but that was interesting, too. It's just, again, it's so interesting that, people have such ideas about what you should be doing with your music making. Okay, so if I just type up this particular minuet, you can see how popular that it is, and it just comes right up. Okay, so you know what? That's going to be, so look for that in the homework. Again, I'll either post it tonight or tomorrow sometime, but it'll be something that you can look forward to over at cmajorsclassroom.com. Okay, so let me get out of that. So that's the reminders I wanted to give you. Okay, so let's go back. Then we're going to be wrapping up today. So, Mother's Day stories. Let me just share with you about how I got started playing the piano. And then I would just encourage you to share this story with your friends. If you just happen to be talking over a cup of coffee and talking about music making. But I got started playing the piano because someone in my family noticed I was paying attention to music, like a lot of music. And so I just happened to hear on television this very popular song that was played on the piano that was part of a children's special that came on every year. And the whole family watched, and it happened to be the quote-unquote Charlie Brown song. So, again, this is before I even got into piano lessons. And the age that I was, that's up in the air. Some people say I was younger. Some people say I was a little bit older. But I know that I didn't really start taking formal piano lessons until around 7 or 8. And that was at the recommendation of my piano teacher. That's just how they did it back then. They didn't let you start any earlier than that. So there was no music in the brain. There was no music for little Mozarts. There was none of that. It was just, okay, when your hands grow a little bit more, when your eye-hand coordination is a little bit better, we don't care that you're already picking out tunes on the piano. We're waiting for you to grow, and now you can start piano lessons. That's how I started. Now, prior to that, again, I was just picking out songs. So to give you the idea of how the Suzuki method goes, it lets you really start with all of the auditory ways that you're experiencing music first, and to carry that further. Now, I didn't study Suzuki, but thinking back on my own experience, that's how it started. It's just I was hearing something that really intrigued me enough at that age to want to pick it out, and I was able to pick it out. I wonder what would have happened if I had studied Suzuki, or if I had just kept going that route and just went the route of peer-to-peer learning, as so many of my friends did in my community. They just learned from each other. And so many of the musicians in my community that were adults, they learned from each other for one reason or another. I won't go into the reasons why. But, the whole idea of wanting to know more was always there, the whole desire. So that was the reason for the questions that I came up with in my journal. So I just encourage you to journal too. And journal when you had your first experience with music enough to know you wanted to learn to play the piano. And then prior to piano lessons, I had someone in my family show me how to play all of the music alphabet, one alphabet at a time, but starting with C. For some reason, starting with C. So just like that resource started with C, it was like that. And then went on to other keys and then just grew from there. So I'm very thankful for my family. I'm very thankful for my mother. So here on this Mother's Day weekend, I give thanks and gratitude to my mother for introducing us, not just me, my siblings too, to the music that could be made if we just focused and if we were just determined enough to practice and grow and learn to play the piano and do what the music teacher was saying. And so my parents were able to give us that gift. And again, I really want to just show gratitude towards my mom because she set the tempo for that. She set the pulse for that, if you will, which would later take me into the world as a piano player. And knew enough about music herself to say, this is how I play, but how you play will be different. So I love that about my mom because she didn't say, oh, you will learn the same way that I learned. She opened the door for me to learn differently and said, I want to give you this gift for learning to play a musical instrument. And she did that. So happy Mother's Day to my mother. And I just want to say to all the moms out there who have hopes and dreams for their children, just don't give up. Just really, really encourage them. But at the same time, if you can see that they have a very harsh resistance, don't give up. Just see if there's a different way, because I really think there are so many ways, there's so many paths to piano lessons now. There's not just one way, the one way that we grew up with. Because the reason I say that is because I know that my peers also studied piano, but for some reason a lot of them didn't go as far, or in some cases, a lot of them went as far as I did, and then they just gave up. I just recall this one friend whose mother was so supportive of piano lessons for him. And somewhere in the college years, he just kind of gave up. And looking back on that now, I think I can guess why he gave up. It was because his peers were starting to pressure him and say, hey man, you can play all this stuff on the piano. You can play Mozart, you can play Beethoven, you can play Rachmaninoff, you can play a little Tchaikovsky and Grieg. But, what about what we need you to play here in the church? When are you going to learn to play that? And he has such a strong ear, he ended up just saying, you know what, I give up playing classical music, and had gone on to actually make another instrument his major beyond piano, but super, super talented, music-wise, and then just said, you know what, I'm hitting a brick wall here. I have so much pressure from my family to learn to play in a particular way and to serve the community in one particular way. I'm just going to give up the concert route and then just stay and just play what the community needs me to play. So when I say community, I use that term, in a broad sense, but I really mean church. I just don't want to, I have such a multicultural circle of friends. I don't want to turn off anyone who didn't have the church experience. But in my community, it was a lot about church and very little about classical. So thinking about that, to have a family that's so supportive of my learning to play classical music is almost a miracle in a sense. Growing up in a rural area, why would you sponsor a child to become classically trained and then not even plan the path that would happen after that. Where would that classical music lead to? And it wasn't until much later, after all the classical training was done, that family members started to turn back to me and say, oh, you have a cousin that sings jazz. How come you don't play jazz? Or so-and-so is recording and they're playing blues. How come you don't play blues? And that was just so interesting to me. Now looking back on that, I can journal what my experience is and to really stop and think, yeah, why didn't I? Should I have? Should I be now? So all very interesting questions. But we had the recitals, we had the concerts, we had all the public showcasing of this is what can be done if you put your mind to piano lessons. And so, again, I'm very grateful to my mother, and I just want to say Happy Mother's Day to all of the moms out there and the piano moms that are out there. And thank you. I just wanted to pause there, a grand pause, which I'm sure is one of the musical terms that appear in this book. I'm going to look that up right now. See if it's in here. And it's not. So grand is in here, but not grand pause. So now I'm going to have to find another dictionary of musical terms. Or just look back in some of my old music history books from college. And then speaking to college students. I just wanted to say good luck to all the college students that are taking their juries around this time. And to wish you the best in your music making and going forward. And so you're very brave to do what you're doing. If you're studying music, if you're studying music education here in the 21st century, I just really hope that your path is clear and that you can find your way through the myriad of choices that are out there today. Which leads me to my next question. Why study chords? I leave that question up in the air. Some teachers may agree with studying chords, some may not. But we're doing this podcast because we found that there are lots of questions out there about chords. And as a matter of fact, there's an article that came across my desk this week too. I'm not going to say much about it because the article is rather controversial, but it just says, okay, who really knows music theory well enough to take a test on chords? Who has that type of learning under their belt so they're really, really strong to be able to use words like diatonic? So it's a very interesting question. If you study chords, if you learn to play by chords, if you know how to play quote-unquote fat chords, does that also mean you know how to talk about music in a way that can be tested on an exam and that you would pass? Is that important to you? I'll leave you with that thought today. And I hope to see you all next week right here on C Major Before the Show. Have a fantastic weekend and a Mother's Day celebration. If you're celebrating Mother's Day, thank your moms for piano lessons. Give them a hug and say thank you, because no one has to offer that to you. It's a want. And so if you are gifted with that opportunity, give the person who's giving that to you a very big hug and a very big thank you. And thank you to you for listening and watching C Major Before the Show. Make the best music and be well.